My dear, you know. They pointed their fingers with trembling hands and called you a demon, without ever once asking what made your eyes burn like hellfire. They whispered to each other as if you couldn't hear, painted you in shadows, mocked your silence, and poked the stillness that you fought hard to protect. You gave them a chance. You gave them mercy dressed as patience. But they wanted a monster. So you built one from every accusation they threw like stones. You stitched together your rage, your scars, your unspoken screams into something they couldn't unsee. Because when people call you a demon long enough, they forget that devils don't crawl from hell. Sometimes they're born in it. And you? Oh, you were baptized in betrayal, raised by mockery, fed by backstabs. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your silence for guilt. They took every inch of your humanity and tried to hang it on a noose of rumors. But you didn't break. You sharpened. You evolved. And then you smiled, not with your lips, but with your soul cracking wide open, revealing something darker, something truer, something they never prepared for. You weren't always like this, were you? No. Once upon a time, you believed in people, in redemption, in the good old fairy tales, until the very people you protected started carving scars on your back and asking why you flinched when they touched you. You weren't born cruel. They built you that way. Every smirk, every dismissive word, every fake embrace, they were bricks in the prison they thought you'd rot in. But you turned that prison into a throne. They think demons look like fire and claws. No, demons look like calm faces walking through storms without blinking. Demons look like survivors who stopped apologizing for the fire in their bones. You didn't become a monster. You revealed you were never the lamb. You were the storm pretending to be a breeze, the blade wrapped in velvet, the wrath that once begged to be understood. But when understanding died, wrath took its place. They love to provoke and then cry innocence when the fire reaches their doorstep. But you didn't lash out. You calculated, watched, learned. Every insult, every snide look, every trap they laid, you stepped over it like you were dancing through broken glass. And now, they tremble at the very name they once laughed at. That's the beauty of the transformation. They think it happens overnight. No, it's slow, torturous, like shadows learning how to breathe, like silence learning how to scream. You walked through the furnace, and they assumed you'd melt. They never realized. Some things forge in fire. They accused you of being too cold, too distant, too dark. But what else is left when warmth becomes a weapon used against you? What else is left when every time you opened up, they poured acid in? You shut down, not because you were weak, but because you were done letting them drink your light and spit out poison. You see, there's a strange satisfaction in letting them think they broke you. Let them parade around, thinking they won, thinking you're still down there licking your wounds. Because vengeance doesn't scream, it whispers. And you learned the art of silent retaliation. No revenge painted in blood or violence, no, that would be too merciful. You chose evolution. You turned every scar into armor, every heartbreak into strategy. And when they see you now, unshaken, unreadable, unchained, they panic. They panic because you don't blink anymore. You don't explain. You don't defend. That silence they used to mock, now it haunts them. Because once, your silence meant pain. Now, it means power. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, and that terrifies them more than any scream ever could. But you remember, don't you? The moment it all snapped. The moment you stopped hoping they'd see your pain and started enjoying how blind they were to it. That shift, that exact heartbeat, when you looked in the mirror and didn't flinch anymore. The mask fell, and what stared back wasn't broken. It was awake. Awake in a way that no longer needed acceptance, no longer sought forgiveness. You didn't become a demon to destroy. You became one because the world you lived in only respected monsters. You adapted to survive in their jungle of smiling predators. And now, you're not playing defense anymore. You're the danger they created in their own lab. Frankenstein's monster with a brain sharper than their dull blades of manipulation. And the best part? You still wear that same face, that same calm expression. Only now, there's something behind the eyes, something ancient, something they can't comprehend, but they feel, like static before lightning, like stillness before a hurricane. You don't need to scream your story. You are the story. Your presence is louder than their lies. They tell tales about you in rooms you've never entered, because your silence echoes louder than their gossip ever could. They try to piece together what went wrong. But the truth is, nothing went wrong. You just stopped letting them hold the pen. You took your narrative back. You tore it from their trembling hands and rewrote it with blood-inked conviction. And now, the villain in their story is the hero of his own legend. You, the demon they conjured with their cruelty, the nightmare they summoned in the mirror and now can't unsee. You gave them everything once, time, loyalty, heart, and they set it all on fire. But you walked through the ashes and came out with wings, not angelic, sharp, steel-tipped, blackened by betrayal, forged in disappointment. And here's the twist. You never needed their apology. Their regret is louder than any sorry they could stutter. Because now, they watch from behind fake smiles as you rise, higher, colder, untouchable. They wonder if you even remember them. And you do. But not with pain, with purpose. Every time you walk past a mirror, every time you stare into the void they tried to drown you in, you remember. And you smile. Not with joy, but with acknowledgement. You made it. Not in spite of them, but because of them. So let them squirm in the discomfort of your silence. Let them watch as you become everything they feared you would. Because demons like you don't just haunt. You conquer, quietly, completely, unapologetically. And still, you haven't even started. Because the most terrifying demons are the ones who never needed to scream to be heard. You built a new language out of vengeance, one that speaks in silence, in stares, in the cold weight of presence that makes hearts race and masks fall. You didn't raise your voice. You lowered the room's temperature, and they feel it now. In every space you enter, their breath shortens. Their past rises from the shadows like smoke they thought had cleared. You aren't hunting them. You're just walking your path. And still, it shakes them. Because they know exactly what they did, even if they play dumb. Their guilt doesn't need your reminder. It eats them quietly from within, clawing at the walls of their fake peace. That's what power looks like. Not in revenge soaked with blood, but in evolution that refuses to die quietly. Now they watch you from behind cautious glances, hoping you won't look their way. Because if you do, they might see what they truly unleashed. A soul not lost, but reconfigured. You didn't fall. You transitioned from human to force, from hurt to hurricane. And now, you no longer respond the way you once did. No emotional outbursts, no explanations, just a stillness that disarms and confuses. You became unreadable, unfathomable, and that's the weapon they never expected. Unpredictability laced with intelligence. They used to know how to press your buttons, but now, the control panel's gone, replaced with a wall too high, too slick, too dangerous to climb. You're not just surviving anymore. You're orchestrating. Every move is precise. Every glance is intentional. You've mastered the art of being present without being available. Accessible, yet untouchable. And the irony? Now they crave the very attention they once discarded. But this version of you doesn't entertain clowns. You observe them with the same interest a lion gives to flies. Their drama no longer touches you. Their stories fall flat because you've outgrown their frequency. The tables haven't turned. You flipped the whole game board. They called you chaos, but they never expected you to weaponize it. And now, while they scurry to control the narrative, you are the narrative. One they can't rewrite, can't delete, can't silence. They whisper in circles, trying to dissect your rebirth. They wonder how someone they once belittled became this unshakable presence. But they forget, you didn't evolve in luxury. You evolved in ruins. They broke pieces of you and watched you gather them, not to rebuild the same structure, but to construct a fortress. One that doesn't just keep threats out, but reflects their own venom back at them. Your glow isn't soft, it's blinding. It doesn't invite, it exposes. And they, in their brittle illusion of comfort, never prepared for that kind of illumination. You don't hold grudges, you hold knowledge. And that's far more lethal. You've studied patterns. You've seen how snakes slither in smiles and hide poison behind kindness. Now, you spot them before they open their mouths. You don't attack, you simply vanish from reach. Your absence, curated and calculated, burns more than your presence ever did. You left the battlefield, not in defeat, but in decision. Because warriors of your kind don't waste swords on insects. You became the ghost in their happy moments, the shadow they can't unsee. And still, you say nothing. Because the silence of a mind that's been through fire speaks louder than their desperate noise. Once, they fed on your reactions. Now they starve in your indifference. Once, they dismissed your value. Now they imitate the version of you they can never become. Because you were never just a person. You were a becoming. A transformation they accidentally triggered and now can't undo. You are the storm they summoned with jokes and whispers, thinking you'd break like glass. But you weren't made of glass. You were ice, waiting for the right heat to melt into something more dangerous. And now, you're vapor, untouchable, all around them, seeping into cracks they didn't even know they had. There's a violence in your peace now, a sharpness in your calm. You don't raise your fists, you raise standards. You don't chase closure, you are the closure. And that's what haunts them most. Not that you fought back, but that you no longer need to. Your existence alone is their punishment. Your presence is the echo of their mistakes. And they feel it. Every time they see your name, every time they hear your silence, every time they realize the one they buried came back without a heartbeat, but with purpose. You're not their enemy. You're their mirror. And what they see when they look at you now terrifies them, because it reflects their cowardice, their cruelty, their shallow souls dressed in borrowed morality. They wore masks while calling you dangerous, never realizing that you saw through them the whole time. You let them play their game. You let them smile while stabbing, because you knew something they didn't. People always expose themselves when they think they're winning. And oh, how loud they celebrated, how bold they became, until the silence grew, until your glow shifted, until the one they thought was buried started building something in the shadows. They want closure now, want to talk, want to clear the air. But you don't talk to echoes. You don't explain truth to liars. You don't offer closure to those who only understand chaos. You watched them write your ending with blood-stained pens, and then you set fire to the whole script. Not to hurt them, but to free yourself, because you realized something deadly. You never needed their validation to be unstoppable. All you needed was for them to show you what you're truly capable of when you stop trying to be lovable in a world that fears authenticity. This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about revelation. You aren't just walking away, you're ascending, not in arrogance, in detachment. Their noise no longer touches your signal. You're tuned into higher frequencies now, the kind only few can endure. And they're stuck in reruns of a show you've long stopped watching. They scream into the void, hoping to drag you back. But you became the void. And now they fall into it every time they try to reach you. You didn't come back to prove a point. You are the point. A living reminder that the same pressure they used to crush you became the reason you now walk like thunder wears your bones. They didn't expect you to rise. They expected you to beg. But demons don't beg. They bide their time. And when they move, the world shifts. Not with noise, but with intensity. And what they don't know yet is that this is still just the beginning. Because when they thought you had delivered your final blow, they hadn't yet realized you were only warming your hands over the ashes. You weren't done. You were just deciding how cruelly elegant your next step would be. You didn't need fire anymore. You became the temperature drop, the kind that makes even shadows shiver. And now, you don't just move through the world. You redefine its weight. Their stories about you turned from mockery into folklore. They whisper your name with a tremble now, not because they respect you, but because they remember, not what you did, but how they felt when you arrived, how everything around them shifted. You outgrew their perception and their projections. The version of you that needed to defend, explain, prove, is extinct. What lives now is something they cannot recognize, because it's built from truths they fear to confront. You carved a throne out of all the times they told you to sit down. You forged armor out of every scar they laughed at. They pointed and labeled you a villain. And when you stopped resisting the label, they watched in horror as you wore it better than they wore their lies. They wanted you to crawl back. Instead, you walked forward, dragging the myth they created of you like a crown made of thorns. And oh, how beautifully it suits you now. They're confused. That's the fun part. They don't understand how someone they tried to destroy now holds more influence in silence than they ever did screaming. They stalk your shadows, hoping to find weakness. But there's nothing left to exploit. No insecurity to poke. no guilt to manipulate, because you've transcended the battlefield entirely. You no longer throw punches. You shift tectonic plates with presence. They gossip and you grow. They plan and you pivot. They lie and you build. Not in noise, but in brilliance. They weren't ready for the kind of revenge that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't seek validation, that simply becomes the thing they'll never recover from. And still, you haven't said a word. That's what terrifies them most, that you didn't seek revenge the way they know it. You chose evolution, and evolution is unforgiving. It doesn't explain itself to the past. It doesn't shrink for comfort. It doesn't mourn the version of you they betrayed. It annihilates it and replaces it with a being forged in precision, patience, and pain, too sacred to be shared. You didn't scream when they broke you. You simply listened. You watched. You calculated. And then when the world least expected it, you arrived, not to prove, but to be the very thing they underestimated. And now they pay. Not with blood, but with realization, with regret so loud it drowns their joy. They see you everywhere now, not your face, your impact. In rooms they once ruled, your absence echoes like a warning. In circles where your name used to be mocked, now it's muttered in envy. They try to copy your style, your tone, your presence. But imitation without transformation is just costume. And they look ridiculous playing dress up in a skin they never earned. You didn't build yourself to impress them. You built yourself because you refused to die at their feet. And now they can't breathe unless you're watching. But you're not watching. You're creating, manifesting, reshaping the very gravity they once used to keep you small. You flipped the system, rewrote the game, shattered their rulebook, and then handed them the pieces with a smile that didn't need to say, "I told you so." Because the beauty of your vengeance is that it looks like peace. You glow now, not like a savior, like a warning sign, the kind that keeps the snakes out, the rats quiet, and the cowards praying they never get your attention again. Because you know now, true power doesn't destroy loudly. It dismantles quietly, with class, with posture, with presence that leaves people questioning whether you're human or something beyond it. They used to call you broken. Now they call you cold. And you love that. Because what they call cold, you call boundaries. What they call scary, you call clarity. What they fear is not your darkness. It's your refusal to let them back in. They're not sorry. They're just locked out. And that's the cage they'll never escape. You gave them the chance to stand beside you. They mocked it. Now they watch from below, knowing they'll never reach that height again. They gather in groups to feel powerful. You walk alone and shift atmospheres. They post to be seen. You move in silence and the world adjusts its focus. They talk in circles. You change the orbit. You didn't just become something else. You became the reminder that every betrayal births either a grave or a god. And you chose the latter. Now, they have to live with the ripple effect of your silence, of every word you didn't say, of every reaction you refused to give. And while they try to understand what you are, you're already becoming something else, something untouchable. Because once you've seen who people truly are, you no longer crave their applause. You crave distance, and you wear that distance like armor, heavy, beautiful, holy. They were never prepared for your detachment, because they were addicted to your emotional presence. And now that it's gone, they tremble, hoping you'll return. But why would you return to ruins? when you've become the storm. You're not seeking closure. You're not waiting for apologies. You are the aftermath that doesn't need recognition. The kind that erases old maps and forces new legends to be written. They don't get to speak your name now. Not with familiarity, only with fear. You graduated from their chaos, and while they drown in recycled guilt, you've moved on to real empires, built from scars they caused, but strength they'll never understand. You didn't heal to be soft again. You healed to be holy fire, and holiness doesn't explain itself to ashes. You aren't angry anymore. You're focused, and focus is the sharpest blade. You wield it with elegance, with calm precision, not to cut them, but to carve your legacy into stone they'll never reach. Their opinions? Static. You're the signal. Clear, direct, unbothered. And now, when they try to tell your story, they fumble, because the plot moved on without them. You've outlived the version they tried to contain. And the new chapter? It doesn't need their ink. So let them stare. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. You didn't become a demon to hurt them. You became a demon to save yourself. And in doing so, you became the very thing that cannot be caged, explained, or erased. And that is the regret they'll carry forever.